At Sennder, when we're approaching electric trucks, we really view it as a 3-phase rollout. So phase 1 means a closed loop between A and B where there's one charger involved. And that means you can do the round trip in one single charge. Yeah. Phase 2 is also a closed loop, still A to B, A to B, but you have 2 chargers involved. And that would mean you're maximizing, let's say, the distance in one direction, you charge, and then you come back and maximize the distance in the other. So that gets you about, let's say, 350 kilometers maximum range in Europe now, or maybe 300. Yeah. And then in phase 1, you're doing anything between a 10-kilometer shuttle lane all the way up to maybe a 100-kilometer round trip. And then phase 3 is what I think we often hear is going to be, hey, that's impossible, free roaming electric trucks. And of course, we think that that's happening, but in the future, it's not ready yet as we talk in 2023, but maybe in 2030, 2028, who knows, maybe there'll be some specific corridors where that works. But we're really focused on phase 1 and phase 2 because that's where the trucks and the infrastructure are already ready today in the limited quantities that are needed to roll those projects out. So maybe you could talk about, from Sustainable Freight Buyers Alliance, what's your approach to project design, and we've also talked a little bit about corridors. You know, maybe how does that all fit together?
Yeah, it's a good question because it creates a structure from what we say, what can you do today versus what's the final product that where everyone free roaming electric trucks on every different concept. We tend to use what we call use cases here. So you can do, as we said, so it starts with urban delivery, generally speaking. As you say, you have a distribution center on the edge of the road of a city. They can do their rounds. They go 70 kilometers on a daily basis. It's absolutely nothing. So they can do that with battery electric already. The immediate next step is actually what we call regional haul, which is where different cities get connected or different industrial sites. This is where quite often also ports play a role. Airports or major ports in that area that go to the hinterland and back. Their charging infrastructure then becomes more important to those areas. It's either on either side or one of the 2 sides, as you just described. Then the third phase will actually be, can you do regional haul in terms of a corridor, which can be bi-directional between 2 places that have a reasonably dense transportation network. There's certain corridors in Europe that, of course, are quite obvious in this regard. Quite often we mention the route which is from the Nordics through Germany, through Denmark, Germany, then to the Netherlands, to the port of Rotterdam and port of Antwerp, actually in Belgium. There's also a secondary corridor, you can argue, which is through the port of Rotterdam and the port of Antwerp, going down south to Marseille and France. Those are 2 natural corridors, and that will build out gradually. Then the final stage is exactly as you described. As you go into 1 corridor, 2 corridors, you get multiple corridors that actually are being deployed accordingly, and then you allow a full run. There is one complexity here, which is you need this back and forth loads. And what we see sometimes, organizations still struggling, and we haven't solved this yet either, is to find a good return flow. So you might have a good flow from the port of Rotterdam to, say, Düsseldorf or Cologne, which is a major industrial area. However, you don't have a return flow immediately, and that needs to be balanced out. So that's a struggle that companies have, but we try to facilitate that through the Sustainable Freight Buyers Alliance, saying like, actually, we're 50 companies here today. You must have return flows that are willing to do this together. And that's what we're trying to pilot here then, to allow organizations to scale and to test this type of technology, because these distances are on the edge of what technology does today. It's not on the edge of what the technology is for 2 years from now. Huh? So
exactly. So that's exactly where demand aggregation comes together. Then you've got the charging, you've got the trucks all coming together.
Yeah, and that also allows us then to say, look, at these corridors, organizations are willing to deploy electric trucks first. And that's where we want charging infrastructure to be deployed first as well.
Right.
And you can work then with charge point operators then to say, look, this is the general concept. Would you be willing to help us there? And that's where you see then the whole ecosystem starting to come together, what we try to do. Yeah.
So we talked a little bit about our approach with phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 in terms of electric rollout. How is Smart Freight Center looking at that?
Yeah, it's good you ask that question actually, because it's about how do you get from where we are today which is about kind of can we do urban deliveries electric and to some extent regional, to the final destination of where everything can be done battery electric trucks. And we tend to approach this through different use cases where we say you actually start with local urban delivery, to some extent small regional haul type of transportation. Then to think about, can we do city to city? Generally speaking, that starts actually at the ports as well, because these are major industrial nodes that go to the hinterland and go back. And then to start thinking about this, can the port to the local, to the hinterland, to beyond that? So kind of taking a corridor approach accordingly. And then you have multiple corridors that's starting to come together. So if you have one corridor, then you have the second corridor deployed, and then the third corridor. And then you get into a full suite of logistics, of battery electric trucks that are coming there. So we really take this use case approach, which is needed.